thing of not starting recording. All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to BullsEye's Happy Half Hour. Today we're focused on cybersecurity and specifically phishing attacks. So during this, you'll be muted. However, if you have any questions, we know those are important and they're important to us. So to ask a question, type it in the chat box and we will get to as many as we can during the presentation. And if we don't get to them all after the presentation, you'll be sent a copy of this recording and an answer sheet with all the questions that were asked and the answers for them. So let's get this going. Today, I'd like to introduce our security experts. We have James McHale and Evan Branstner. So let's get things started. The number and frequency and sophistication of phishing attacks has grown dramatically since the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic set in. A lot of this is due to work from home. Even the most aware workers have fallen prey to this, and the human firewall has become a very important part of the good defense in the strategy. We're going to talk about the latest tactics being used and the insights and solutions available to assure your company is safe from phishing and other cybersecurity threats. So let's start with this, gentlemen. How big a problem is phishing?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So nearly every attack begins with phishing. It's a huge problem regardless of however many security products you have. If you have firewalls, if you have endpoint software, server software, you can always phish an employee by sending an email that seems legitimate and just basically trick them into bypassing all of your security stack.
Kind of what you got to think about, Mark and guys, is, you know, these are the new digital fraudsters. They're the con artists of the digital domain. And you know, their phishing activity isn't slowing down. I mean, I'm seeing reports out there just as recently that Google was looking at it, and there's been an increase of 350%. I mean, this was a 2-month variant when it went from about 150,000 in 1 month in 2020, and then 2 months later, we were up to 530,000 instances of it. That's a 350% increase.
That's incredible.
It's outrageous. And 96% of all these attacks are intended just for intelligence gathering. You know, they do things like brand impersonations. You know, that actually takes up a lot of it. Like it's like 80% of all the spear phishing attacks are brand impersonations. You know, it's something where you think it's something legit, something that you would be comfortable seeing, and there's one minor piece that you're not paying attention to, and they gotcha. Yep. You know.
So based on that and the amount and the how this problem is increasing, what are you seeing in the market? What types and sizes of organizations are being targeted, and what have you seen from the outcomes of some of these attacks?
Well, it's all organizations. Doesn't matter if they're small or large organizations. There's something called a supply chain attack, where basically the victim of the current phishing attack is not necessarily the target. And that's not only with small companies. In the case of a small company, you could want to get to the CEO through their receptionist, and you can get through the receptionist by, you know, some vendor they use for lunches or flowers or gifts for employees, or however you get there. Those are small businesses being attacked. The very famous one is the HVAC vendor that was attacked to ultimately get to Target because they had VPN access straight in there and did not themselves have the best security. And then even with SolarWinds recently, lots of organizations have SolarWinds, but there were kill switches found in the malware. So SolarWinds is basically being used to attack the U.S. federal government, and not necessarily SolarWinds themselves are all SolarWinds customers.
Interesting.
So you can start to see how this.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Yep.
No,
yes,
ahead.
It was. And I was just going to say, you can start to see how this starts to compound. You know, they get into one piece, which then gives them more data to get into more pieces of it. You know, it's not just here in the U.S. Like around the world, in Q4, they were reporting that in Brazil, they had seen an increase of 232% of phishing attempts. It's just going through the roof. And the reason is they're getting smarter at this game, and they're figuring out the more data they hack, the better they are at the game itself, is kind of the way it rolls.
Okay. So we're seeing it around the world. We're seeing increased demand or increased phishing. We're seeing it across all sorts of organizations. So this is widespread and touching pretty much everyone. So what do you think the folks that have called in for this today, what do you think they should expect to see from phishing attacks in 2021 now?
Well, I would have to say it's only going to get worse and more sophisticated with that. And what I mean by that is criminals are getting their hands on some really good stolen data. There's companies out there like not too long ago, Clearview AI, which is a facial recognition software firm. This is a company that has a database, as I think last count it was like 3 million online images and data that goes with those images. And police forces and FBI's and CIA, they all use this database themselves. But unfortunately, this database was recently breached. This lost data will help empower so many online criminals to be much better at phishing attempts. You know, it's one of these things that you kind of have to think about. Realistically, there's an organization out there, one of the industry leading cyber awareness organizations, put out a report in 2020 that said that 38% of users who don't undergo some kind of cyber awareness training fail any kind of phishing test they're hit with. So, I mean, that's telling you automatically that with them getting smarter at this, we've got to get smarter at this as well. And we've got to make sure that people understand what phishing's about and what to look for.
And 38% might not seem like a ton, but if something is misconfigured, it might take one user failing a phishing test. I mean, it all depends on who they were, what access they had. Even, like I said, misconfigured access. Someone might be an admin of a server where they shouldn't be, and then you can just kind of crawl all over the place from there. But I think as far as trends go, one of the most disturbing ones, I think, is just a couple days ago, this Florida water treatment thing where it appears from the person who witnessed it that TeamViewer was used to adjust levels of sodium hydroxide to over 100 times, basically like poisoning the water. And since there's no widespread, I'm speculating, but since there's no widespread announcement of a TeamViewer attack, this was probably phishing. It was probably someone authorized who got their credentials for TeamViewer, which is like an IT screen share assistance program. Someone probably who was authorized to be on there got phished, and then their username and password was stolen to TeamViewer into this other guy's computer who presumably thought it was like his own IT doing it, at least for a minute until he witnessed what happened. So,
yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right on that, Evan. I mean, and I think part of it is that people are getting comfortable with clicking on that executable since we've had the pandemic and everybody's gotten used to video conferencing. I mean, probably clicking in just to get in, you know, to Zoom or MS Teams. If you don't have it installed, there's the small executable that it launches that allows you to get in to have that access. So there's a desensitization going on with that comfort level, I think, which is putting people somewhat at risk.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that Florida one, I mean, the sodium hydroxide, for those who may not know, is lye, and you know, it's used in microscopic amounts in the water treatment. But if you multiply that times 100, that causes serious health issues, up into and including death. So that is a scary thing that can happen just by getting in through something that is a program that you use on a regular basis to make sure your employees their computers are working and somebody can help fix them. So
And Mark, you bring up a good point, yeah, and I think I want to highlight that. Here in the United States, we've been kind of lucky that a lot of this phishing and the cyber attacks have been really around for profit. This is almost getting into where we're calling cyber terrorism for some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, you know, it's raising it to another level for us here.
Yep. So let's move on to the next part here. Let's talk about the kind of solutions that you recommend. I know that you guys are pretty sure of yourselves on which ones we should be using, but what do you recommend that companies put in place to first defend against phishing attacks, and then to secondly support a solid cybersecurity stance in general?
Yeah, for the phishing, you want to have a tool that can simulate phishing emails, and then you want to have security awareness training. The simulated phishing is basically a safe way of sending spam emails through your company to your employees, and then it has reporting built in, so you can see what was clicked on, who did it, how long they had the email, when they opened it, did they do it a certain amount of times, and then and the flip side, it exposes employees to different types of emails, so you can see like